I know Obama finally stopped it after years of mass protest.
Right, years of social movements and lawyers are who stop pipelines. Social movements and lawyers. This leaves one pipeline that is still considered somewhat viable. That pipeline is Enbridge's Line 3. That is a 915,000 barrel a day tar sands pipeline going from Alberta to Superior. And what is very significant about that pipeline, aside from the fact that it's the equivalent of 50 new coal-fired generators coming online, exactly what you do not need in the face of the UN report and the president's own reports on climate change out of the administration. But in addition to that, that feeds into every other pipeline that goes through, for instance, the Straits of Mackinac, the pipeline that is 60 years old. Enbridge's pipeline is a feeder for most of the infrastructure in the northern Great Lakes territory. So that pipeline is what we are fighting. And unfortunately for all of us, the Public Utilities Commission of Minnesota issued a rogue decision in favor of that pipeline. You know, to tell you what I mean by a rogue decision is that, you know, I've been here a few times talking about this pipeline. But, you know, we had 3 years of hearings on this pipeline. 72,000 people came out and testified, of which 69,000 people testified against the pipeline. Equal amount of evidence. The Department of Commerce did not recommend issuing a certificate of need for that pipeline. And in addition to that, the administrative law judge, which reviewed the pipeline for 3 years, recommended against issuing a permit for the route. In June of this year, the Public Utilities Commission of Minnesota disregarded all evidence, disregarded all recommendations by every agency, and issued a permit. And just a couple of days after Thanksgiving, they reaffirmed that permit.
Winona LaDuke, Native American activist with the Ojibwe Nation, executive director of the group Honor the Earth. Back with her in a minute. Somos la megas ardiendo, somos la rabia y la voz. Hemos venido a cantaros que se acabó la opresión. Somos el eco que rompe toda verticalidad. Siguen soplando los vientos de osadía y libertad. No voy a guardar silencio, no he nacido para callar. Ocupemos los espacios que no quisieron negar. No soy madre por defecto, ni he nacido para esperar. Reconstruyo los cimientos del sistema patriarcal. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman as we continue our discussion with Winona LaDuke, Ojibwe environmental leader, executive director of the group Honor the Earth. She lives and works on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. I sat down with her earlier this week. So describe your area for us. You know, when you come on to Democracy Now!, we always say you're on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. But describe it for us and where this pipeline is.
You know, where I think about my territory as where the wild things are. Where the wild things are. I have, you know, lynx. I have wolves. I have bears. You know, there are no caribou there now, but there are moose. There are elk. You know, I live in a place where there are still insects. I live in a place where there is still life. And so that place is northern Minnesota, covered by treaty territories, 1855, 54, 37, and 42, full of wild rice, full of lakes, lakes that you can still drink from, lakes that you can still drink from. That's where I live. And that's what this battle is about. It's about, you know, can we protect that? And
when do they say the pipeline will be built?
They've been trying to build it for 3 years. You know, they say that they will begin construction this year. But as I said, you know, we are now entering the appeals process. We are hoping that the state of Minnesota joins us in appealing the decision by the PUC because it was unsupportable, according to the Department of Commerce, legally and in any realm. I mean, the insurance itself, the state approved a $1.4 billion insurance agreement with the Enbridge Corporation. That was based on the Kalamazoo spill, which was a much smaller spill that's not really catastrophic, plus doesn't include the 17,000 miles of pipeline that Enbridge has. You know, and for me, this is part of, you know, what the New Deal is really got to be about. I mean, we are a country that has a D in infrastructure. We have a D in infrastructure. Lawrence, Mass blows up. Bridges crumble. You know, we are probably losing 30% of our gas in aging infrastructure in this country. And so what we need is a New Deal that builds infrastructure for people, not for oil companies. As I said, $7 billion that is for, an oil company pipeline, that could be spent much better.
I'm looking at this invoice you brought in regarding climate damages. Explain.
Right. Okay. So we've issued an invoice to the Enbridge Corporation because, in all of their hearings, they talk about, their power plants are going to be, their pumping stations will be powered with solar, lipstick on a pig. And, they talk about the climate impact of this pipeline is not significant. Well, we have a math team at Honor the Earth, and what we figured out is that the carbon equivalent of what they are carrying, if you had to take that out of the environment, which is what basically we have to do, the trending rate is $1,000 a metric ton. And so the amount of carbon that Enbridge is carrying in, just the carbon itself, is worth $170 billion in expenses annually. The total due, kind of if you're doing some math and aggregating the combined impact of such a badly planned project, is $266 billion annually. And so we have issued an invoice from the creator, Honor the Earth, acting on behalf of the creator, to the Enbridge Corporation, saying that they should pay this amount. We would prefer to have it early on because, according to Moody's, they were downgraded to just above junk bond status in December. And so with the experience that Americans and Native people have of multinational corporations like Enron going bankrupt, we think it would be wise to collect the money in advance.
So you've got line 3 carbon metric ton, then boreal forest.
Yeah, there's a price to destroying boreal forest.
And explain what a boreal forest is.
Tar sands is a boreal forest. And you turn something that is the oxygen of the north. I mean, the boreal forest of northern Canada, is the equivalent of the lungs. It's the Amazon of the north. It's the Amazon of the north, and that is what is being destroyed by the tar sands. Wetland, this is, just going through our wetlands, the value of a wetland. I'm an economist by training, but how do you value a wetland for what it does for Mother Earth and for the planet and for your water and for insects and for where the wild things are? But there are some numbers that have been associated with it. We did some math. We multiplied those numbers out. Enbridge's math skills were not ours. And so we've issued this invoice.
And finally, social cost.
I'm not sure how to quantify that, but the perfect example is that, even without a spill, the threat of a spill in a community who relies on wild rice is very traumatic. Having a mega project shoved down your throat causes suicide in Native communities. We already have diabetes and every other epidemic that you do not want to have, and nothing in this pipeline contributes to our well-being. So who's paying for that? Who's paying for that? The state of Minnesota is who made the decision to shove the pipeline down our throats, and so we will fight them. We will fight them.